I was standing outside my husband's study with divorce papers in my handbag when I heard him say my name. Not softly, not lovingly, not the way a husband speaks about a wife he is afraid to lose. He said it like he was tired of carrying a lie that had become too heavy. "She thinks I don't know," he told his mother. I froze with my hand on the door frame. The house was quiet, except for the low hum of the air conditioner and the rain tapping against the windows. It was almost midnight. I had been upstairs for an hour, sitting on the edge of our bed, staring at the divorce papers my lawyer had prepared that afternoon. My plan was simple. Walk downstairs, hand them to him, tell him I was done. No shouting, no begging, no long speech about the years I had spent feeling invisible in my own marriage. Just done. But then I heard his voice from the study. My husband, Caleb Morgan. The same man who had barely looked at me over dinner. The same man who had spent months coming home late, hiding his phone, speaking to me like I was a burden, and letting his mother treat me like an unwanted guest in the house I had helped build. He was speaking to his mother, Evelyn Morgan, a woman who believed her son had been born for greatness, and I had only been useful while he was climbing toward it. I should have walked away. I should have kept my plan. But when you hear your name through a closed door, spoken by someone who has hurt you, your body stops before your pride can move. So I stood there, quiet, breathing shallowly, listening. Evelyn's voice came next. "She knows enough, Caleb. A woman always knows when a marriage is dying. The question is whether she has the courage to leave before she embarrasses everyone." My fingers tightened around the folder in my handbag. Caleb laughed once. But it was not a happy laugh. It sounded broken. "That's the problem, Mom. She does have the courage." The room went still. Even the rain seemed to soften. Evelyn said, "Then let her go. You have given that woman enough years." That woman. Not my name. Never my name when she wanted me small. Caleb's voice dropped. "I can't. You can. You just feel guilty." "No," he said. "I can't let her leave because if she files first, everything comes out." My heart began to pound. Everything? For months, I had thought I knew the shape of our broken marriage. The late nights, the coldness, the whispers, the other woman maybe, the money missing from accounts, his mother's sudden confidence that I would soon be gone. I thought the divorce papers in my bag were the beginning of my freedom. But behind that door, my husband was speaking like there was another truth. A worse truth. Evelyn's voice sharpened. "Then stop being weak and control the situation." Caleb exhaled. "You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You married beneath you. You let her become too involved in your company, and now you are afraid she will use that against you." I waited for Caleb to agree. He did not. Instead, he said the sentence that changed everything. "I didn't marry beneath me. I married the only reason I survived." My throat closed. Evelyn scoffed. "Don't romanticize her." "I'm not. I'm telling the truth for once." For once. Those two words hit harder than any insult. Caleb continued. "You keep acting like Liana was lucky I chose her. But when Morgan and Finch was failing, she paid payroll from her savings. When my investors pulled out, she found the client that kept us alive. When I was too ashamed to answer creditors, she answered them. When I almost quit, she stayed up all night writing the proposal that won the county contract." My eyes burned. I remembered that proposal. 42 pages, 2 nights with no sleep. Coffee gone cold beside my laptop. Caleb pacing behind me, panicked and furious at the world, while I turned his messy ideas into something a serious client could read. He had won that contract. The article afterward called him a rising business mind. He told reporters he had built the company on instinct. I stood beside him and smiled. Evelyn's voice turned cold. "Wives support. That does not mean they own." There was a pause. Then Caleb said, "She should." I stopped breathing. "What did you say?" Evelyn asked. "She should own part of it, maybe most of it." "Are you insane?" "No, I think I've been insane for years pretending I did it alone." I leaned against the wall. suddenly unsure whether my legs could hold me. The man inside that room did not sound like the man I had been married to for 10 years. He sounded tired, ashamed, afraid, and honest. Evelyn's voice became sharp enough to cut. "This is exactly why I told you not to marry a woman with that much pride. She put ideas in your head. She made you weak." "No," Caleb said quietly. "You did." Silence. Long. Heavy. Dangerous. Then Evelyn said, "Excuse me?" Caleb's voice shook, but he did not stop. "You made me believe gratitude was weakness. You made me believe if I admitted how much Liana did, it would make me less of a man. You kept telling me she was using me, when the truth is, I was using her." I pressed one hand over my mouth. Not to cry. To stay silent. Because the man I had come downstairs to divorce was finally saying the words I had begged silently for years to hear. But truth spoken behind a closed door is complicated. It heals and hurts at the same time. Evelyn said, "You sound pathetic." "No," Caleb replied. "I sound late." Then his voice broke. "I think she's going to leave me." I closed my eyes. The divorce papers in my handbag suddenly felt heavier. Evelyn did not soften. "Then make sure she leaves with nothing she can use against you." That was when the warmth in my chest died. Because whatever Caleb was feeling, whatever guilt had finally reached him, his mother was still exactly who she had always been. And I still did not know what Caleb would do when he saw the papers in my hand. Before I continue, tell me where you are watching from tonight. And if you have ever stood outside a door and heard the truth people thought you were too weak to know, stay with this story. Because sometimes the thing that saves you is not what someone says to your face. It is what they finally admit when they think you are not listening. My name is Liana Morgan now, but before marriage attached me to a man whose pride kept growing while mine kept shrinking. I was Liana Bell. I grew up in a narrow yellow house at the end of Maple Row, with a mother who cleaned offices at night and a father who fixed radios until people stopped using radios. We were not poor in the way television likes to show poverty. We had food most days. We had school shoes. We had Christmas, though some years it was smaller than others. But I understood early that money had moods. Some months, it sat quietly at the table. Other months, it slammed doors. My mother counted bills with her lips pressed tight. My father stretched repairs as long as he could. We learned which envelopes were urgent by the way adults handled them. My mother, Celia Bell, believed education was a ladder, but she also believed ladders were useless if people kept kicking them away from women. "Liana," she used to say, "learn everything they think you do not need to know." She made me sit beside her while she paid bills. She taught me how to read contracts, how to compare interest rates, how to ask why a fee existed, how to keep copies. My father taught me another kind of knowledge. He taught me patience. He could sit with a broken radio for hours, turning tiny screws, checking wires, listening to static as if the machine were trying to confess. "Things rarely stop working for no reason," he said. "Most breakdowns leave clues before they fail." I thought he meant radios. My parents were almost always teaching me about people. When I was 17, my father died suddenly of a heart attack in his little repair shop. My mother found him beside a half-open radio, one hand still resting near the dial. After that, everything became harder. My mother worked more nights. I got a job at a grocery store. College became something I would have to earn piece by piece. I did. Scholarships, part-time jobs, cheap meals, shared rooms, textbooks bought used and resold. I studied business administration and operations because I liked understanding how things held together. People praised founders, CEOs, and dreamers. I became fascinated by the invisible systems beneath them. Payroll, supply chains, client relations, documentation, compliance, scheduling. Budgets. The unglamorous work that keeps ambitious people from collapsing under their own speeches. That was probably why Caleb impressed me at first. He was all vision. I was all structure. We met at a small business networking event held in a community center with bad coffee and folding chairs. Caleb was speaking to 3 people near the back, describing a company he wanted to build with such intensity that even the bad fluorescent lights seemed to lean toward him. Morgan and Finch. That was the name. A consulting firm that would help small city governments modernize their public service systems. He wanted to make permits easier, public requests faster, records cleaner, and local offices less chaotic. It was a good idea. Messy, but good. After his little talk, I asked him how he planned to handle data privacy compliance for municipalities with different state requirements. He stared at me, then smiled. You understood the idea. I understood the missing wall. He laughed. Most men get defensive when a woman points to the missing wall. Caleb looked excited. For 3 hours, we sat in the corner with paper cups of coffee while I asked questions, and he answered with sketches, half-formed ideas, and energy that felt almost contagious. He asked if I wanted to consult on the project. I said I had a job. He asked if I wanted dinner. I said that was a different question. We had dinner the next night. Caleb was charming then. Not polished. Not yet. He was nervous in a way that made him human. He talked too fast, apologized when he interrupted me, and wrote down book recommendations I gave him. He asked about my mother, my father, my work, my dreams. I told him I wanted to build systems that made people's lives easier without them needing to know who built them. He said, "That sounds lonely." I said, "No, it sounds useful." He looked at me like useful was beautiful. That was how he got in. Within a year, we were together. Within 2, we were engaged. Within 3, married. My mother liked Caleb at first, but carefully. She had the look of a woman who had spent her life cleaning offices, where men with nice shoes made bad decisions. She did not trust ambition unless it could sit still and be humble. After our engagement dinner, she walked me to her car and said, "Does he love you, or does he love how well you hold him together?" I laughed because I was happy and did not want wisdom to interrupt. "Mama, he loves me." "I hope so." "You don't believe him?" "I believe he needs you. I am asking whether he knows the difference." I hugged her and told her she worried too much. She held me longer than usual. At our wedding, Caleb cried. Real tears, I think. His mother cried too, but for different reasons. Evelyn Morgan never liked me. Not openly at first. She was too careful for that. She wore pale blue to the wedding and smiled for photos, but her eyes measured everything. My dress, my family, my mother's hands, the guests from my side, the neighborhood people who laughed loudly and danced without shame. Evelyn came from old professional pride. Not great wealth, but enough status to believe she had lost something by sitting near people who worked with their hands. Her husband, Caleb's father, had been a respected attorney before he died. Evelyn raised Caleb to believe he was destined to restore a family greatness that existed mostly in her memory. At the reception, she told me, "Caleb has always needed someone practical. It is good he found you before the company takes off." Before, that word stayed with me. I did not understand then that she already saw me as part of the scaffolding. Useful during construction, removed when the building was ready to impress. The early years of marriage were hard, but I was not unhappy. Caleb and I lived in a small apartment above a pharmacy. Morgan and Finch operated from a rented desk in a co-working space that smelled like burnt coffee and printer ink. He had one client, no employees, and a business account that sometimes looked like a dare. I worked full-time as an operations analyst for a nonprofit, then came home and worked nights on his company. Our company, he called it then. I built templates, prepared proposals, researched city procurement rules, created project timelines, set up accounting systems, designed a client intake process, corrected contracts, answered emails when Caleb was too overwhelmed, paid invoices when cash ran short. And yes, I used my savings more than once to keep the business breathing. Caleb knew. At first, he thanked me constantly. "You saved us," he would say, pulling me into his arms at midnight. Us. That word had once felt like home. Then came the first big contract, the county modernization project. Caleb had almost given up on it because the request for proposal was complicated and the deadline was brutal. I saw the opportunity clearly. It was exactly the kind of project Morgan and Finch needed. But Caleb was scared. Scared of failing. Scared of being exposed. Scared that his dream would prove smaller than his voice. So I built the proposal. I did not simply edit. I built. I created the implementation plan, the staffing model, the risk framework, the training schedule, the budget narrative, and the compliance appendix. Caleb contributed vision, client language, and the big picture framing. But the bones were mine. We submitted at 11:58 p.m., 2 minutes before deadline. When Morgan and Finch won, Caleb cried in our kitchen. He lifted me off the floor and said, "We did it." I believed him. The local paper interviewed him 2 weeks later. The headline read, "Young Founder's Bold Vision Wins County Contract." No mention of me. That was fine, I told myself. Wives do not need headlines. Partners know the truth. Except truth kept shrinking. After the contract, the company grew fast. Too fast. We hired staff, moved into a real office, got more clients. Caleb started wearing better suits. Then he started speaking on panels. Then people began calling him a rising star in civic innovation. Then his mother began coming around more often. Evelyn loved the new Caleb. The photographed Caleb. The invited Caleb. The Caleb whose name was printed on programs and plaques. She did not love the tired Caleb who had once panicked over payroll. She wanted that version erased. And because Caleb wanted her admiration more than he admitted, he helped erase him, which meant erasing me. At first, the erasure was small. In interviews, he said, "I," more than "we." At dinners, he said I helped with operations, like I had been a helpful assistant. When his mother praised his genius, he smiled instead of saying, "Liana built this with me." When I raised it, he kissed my forehead. "You know what you mean to me." That sentence became a hiding place. Private praise, public absence. Over time, even private praise disappeared. Success did something to Caleb that failure never had. Failure made him frightened, but human. Success made him polished, but hollow in places. He began staying late, not because work required it, but because he enjoyed being needed by everyone except me. He hired people who admired him. He avoided people who challenged him. He moved me from central operations to internal support because he said my style was too intense for client-facing leadership. Too intense, meaning I asked questions that made his promises uncomfortable. Then came Natalie. Natalie Cross joined Morgan and Finch as Director of Strategic Partnerships. She was smart, confident, and careful with power. Not loud, not obvious. She knew how to make Caleb feel like a visionary without reminding him that visions require invoices. She was everything Evelyn wanted near him. Educated at the right schools, dressed in soft neutrals, spoke in language Evelyn considered elevated, called me grounding, which I learned was what women say when they want to compliment your usefulness without acknowledging your importance. The first time Evelyn met Natalie at a company dinner, her whole face lit up. "Caleb," she said later, loud enough for me to hear. "Now that is the kind of woman who understands the world you're entering." I waited for Caleb to correct her. He did not. That night, in the car, I said, "Your mother insulted me." He sighed. She complimented Natalie. By comparing her to me, "You always hear things that way." "What way?" "Like people are attacking you." I turned toward the window. Streetlights passed over the glass like small warnings. Within 6 months, Natalie was everywhere. Late meetings, travel days, strategy dinners, texts at midnight, inside jokes, a hand on Caleb's arm that stayed 1 second too long. When I asked directly if something was happening, Caleb looked exhausted. "Liana, I can barely breathe under the pressure I'm carrying. And you want to invent drama?" Drama. There it was. Every woman in a dying marriage knows that word. It means your pain has become inconvenient. I stopped asking. But I started documenting. Not because I planned to use it. Because my mother's voice had returned in my head. Keep copies. Trust is good. Blindness is not. Then the money problems began. That surprised me. From the outside, Morgan and Finch looked stronger than ever. New office, new clients, new press, bigger staff. But I still understood the systems. I saw delayed vendor payments, rushed contracts, inflated projections, expensive hires, and strange transfers connected to expansion efforts Caleb had not fully explained. When I asked finance for reports, Caleb told them I no longer needed direct access. I confronted him. You removed my access? You changed roles. I built the reporting structure. And now other people manage it. Other people or Natalie? His face closed. This jealousy is beneath you. No. Your dishonesty is beneath the man I married. He stared at me for a long time. Then said softly, maybe I'm not that man anymore. That was one of the few honest things he said to my face. The months after that were cold. We lived in the same house, but not the same life. Evelyn came more often. Sometimes when I was home, sometimes when I was not. She moved through the house like she was inspecting it for the next woman. She commented on the curtains, the pantry, the garden, the dining table. One afternoon, I came home early and found her in my kitchen with Natalie. Natalie was sitting at the island drinking tea from my favorite blue mug. Evelyn looked up calmly. Oh, Liana, you're home. My house, my kitchen, my mug, and I was the surprise. Natalie stood quickly. I'm sorry, Caleb said I could wait here before the board dinner. Did he? She smiled too softly. I hope that's okay. It was not, but Evelyn spoke before I could. Natalie has been such a blessing to Caleb. Some women understand how to support a man without constantly reminding him of the past. I looked at her. What past? The struggle years, she said. The debts. The little sacrifices. It becomes tiresome when a wife keeps score. Natalie looked down at her tea. Not uncomfortable enough to leave. I felt something sharp rise in me. I don't keep score, Evelyn. I remember. She smiled. Same thing, dear. That evening, I told Caleb I wanted a separation. He did not fight. That hurt more than if he had shouted. He rubbed his face and said, maybe space would be good. Space. Another word for making room for someone else. But instead of leaving, we continued in that strange half-marriage. Separate bedrooms, separate schedules, shared appearances, occasional polite dinners, public smiles, private silence. Then my mother got sick. Her heart. Years of work, stress, and grief had worn her down. She was admitted after a fainting episode and stayed in the hospital for 10 days. I sat beside her bed, feeling like a child again. She knew about Caleb. I had told her more than I meant to. One evening she asked, are you staying because love is alive or because leaving feels like failing? I looked at the floor. She nodded. That is an answer, I cried. I don't know when it became this. She took my hand. Things break before they fall. We only admit it when the noise gets loud. My father's radios, my mother's bills, both of them still teaching me. After she came home, I called a divorce lawyer. Her name was Marin Brooks. Sharp, practical, and kind only after the facts were clear. For 2 weeks, I gathered documents, bank statements, emails, company records I still had from earlier years, proof of contributions, old loans, messages, everything. Marin reviewed it all and said, you have a stronger claim than you think, especially regarding marital contributions and potential equity representations. Equity representations. Legal language for broken promises. The divorce papers were prepared on a Thursday afternoon. I picked them up in a blue folder. That evening, I sat in my car outside the law office for 20 minutes, unable to turn the key. I did not feel triumphant. I felt like I was about to bury someone who was still walking around. That night, Caleb came home late. We ate dinner in near silence. He said he had a board call. I said nothing. At 11:30, I took the folder from my bedside drawer and went downstairs. I heard voices. His study door was partly closed. Caleb, Evelyn, my name. and then the conversation that stopped me. I stood there listening while my husband told his mother truths he had denied me for years. That I had saved the company, that I deserved ownership, that he had used me, that Evelyn had trained him to see gratitude as weakness, that he was afraid I would leave. It should have healed me. Instead, it made everything more complicated. Because there is a special cruelty in hearing someone finally understand you only after you are already packed inside your heart. I stepped away from the door before they saw me. I went back upstairs, placed the divorce papers on the bed, and sat beside them until morning. I did not sleep. At 6:15 a.m., Caleb knocked on the bedroom door. He had slept in the guest room for months. The knock felt strange. Gentle. "Liana?" I did not answer. He opened the door slightly. His hair was messy. His face looked tired, older somehow. "I know you were outside the study," he said. My heart stopped. I looked at him. "How?" His eyes lowered. "The floorboard near the hall creaks. It always has." Of course he knew. The house knew us better than we knew each other. He stepped inside. "I'm sorry." I laughed softly. Not because it was funny, because sorry was such a small basket for what he had placed in it. "For what?" He swallowed. "All of it." "No," I said. "Name it?" He closed his eyes. That was harder for him. "Good. I am sorry I erased you." My eyes filled immediately. He continued. "I am sorry I let my mother disrespect you. I am sorry I let Natalie into spaces that should have been protected. I am sorry I used your work and called it mine. I am sorry I made you feel like asking for truth was keeping score." Tears slipped down my face. I hated that they did. Because I did not want him to see how much I had needed those words. He saw anyway. "I am sorry," he whispered, "that I became someone you had to protect yourself from." That one hurt the most, because it was true. I reached beside me and picked up the blue folder. His eyes moved to it. He knew. "Divorce papers?" he asked. "Yes." He nodded slowly, like he had been waiting for a blow and still felt pain when it landed. "Were you going to give them to me last night?" "Yes." "Why didn't you?" I looked at the folder. "Because I heard you tell the truth, and it made me angry." His brows drew together. "Angry?" "Yes, because you knew." My voice shook now. "You knew what I did. You knew what your mother was doing. You knew how much you owed me. You knew Natalie was crossing lines. You knew you were hurting me. You knew. And you still let me spend years wondering if I was crazy." He sat on the edge of the chair near the window, as if his legs could not hold him. "You're right. I expected defense, pressure, excuses." He gave none. That frightened me more than his cruelty had, because now I could not hide behind simple anger. I thought if I admitted it, he said, I would have to face what kind of man I had become. I wiped my face. "And now? Now I think facing it is the only thing left." Silence filled the room. Morning light touched the edges of the curtains. The house looked peaceful, as if it had not held a decade of swallowed pain. I placed the folder between us on the bed. I met with a lawyer. I figured. "She says I have claims." "You do." I looked at him sharply. He nodded. "I called my attorney yesterday too." My body stiffened. He saw the fear. "Not to fight you." "Then why?" "To draft a correction." "A correction?" He breathed in. "Equity transfer, back pay documentation, formal acknowledgement of your contribution. If you leave, you should leave with what you earned. If you stay," he paused, "if there is even a chance you stay, it cannot be inside the same lie." I stared at him. The words were almost too much, too late, too neat, too dangerous. "Did your mother know?" "No. She will hate it." "I know." "Natalie?" His face tightened. "Natalie is resigning." I looked away. "Because you asked her to?" "Because I told her there would be an internal review of partnership boundaries and compensation decisions." That sounds like a business answer. It is. The personal answer is, I let her get too close because she made me feel admired without accountable. Accountable. That word mattered. I looked back at him. Did you sleep with her? He closed his eyes. No. I studied his face. For months, I had imagined the answer, feared it, expected it. He opened his eyes. But I betrayed you. I did not speak. Maybe not in the way you feared, but emotionally, professionally, in loyalty, yes. I let her stand where you should have been. I let my mother compare her to you. I let people believe she understood my company better than the woman who built it with me. The truth did not make the wound vanish, but it changed its shape. He had not crossed every line. He had crossed enough. I stood. I need space. He nodded immediately. I'll leave. That surprised me. What? I'll go to a hotel. This house has been your refuge more than mine lately. I won't make you leave it. I almost laughed from disbelief. A week earlier he would have said the house was ours and meant his comfort. Now he was offering to leave. Why now? I asked. His eyes filled. Because last night, when my mother told me to control the situation, I heard myself in her, and I hated it. That was the beginning of the hardest month of my life. Not because Caleb fought me, because he stopped fighting. And sometimes when someone finally stops being cruel, you are left alone with the grief of how long it took. Caleb moved into a hotel that afternoon. Evelyn called me 17 times. I did not answer. Then she came to the house. I saw her through the door camera, standing on the porch in a cream coat, holding a handbag like a weapon. I opened the door but kept the chain on. Her eyes dropped to it. How dramatic. I smiled tiredly. Good morning, Evelyn. Where is my son? At a hotel. Her face tightened. You pushed him out of his home? He chose to leave. Because you manipulated him. I almost closed the door. But something in me wanted one clean conversation with the woman who had spent years smiling while cutting me. No, Evelyn, you trained him to confuse humility with humiliation, gratitude with weakness, and marriage with ownership. Her eyes flashed. How dare you speak to me that way? Honestly? She stepped closer. Caleb told me he intends to give you part of the company. Yes. That company is his. No, I said. It never was. Not fully. You just liked the version where my work disappeared. Her mouth thinned. You think writing proposals and holding his hand makes you a founder? No? Paying payroll, structuring operations, securing contracts, building compliance systems, managing clients, and keeping the company alive makes me a founder. For once, she had no immediate answer. Then she said, he will regret this. Maybe. But regret is not always proof of a wrong decision. Sometimes it is the cost of finally making a right one. Her face changed. Just slightly. Maybe she heard something. Maybe not. I closed the door. For the next month, Caleb and I communicated mostly through lawyers, emails, and scheduled conversations in neutral places. Not romantic, not dramatic, necessary. Marin, my lawyer, reviewed his proposed equity transfer and nearly dropped her pen. He is offering this voluntarily? Yes. Either guilt has matured into documentation, or he has the best attorney in the state. Both maybe. She looked at me. Do you want the divorce? I looked out her office window. Yes. Then after a long pause, I think. That was the truth. I wanted freedom from the marriage we had. But now Caleb was offering to destroy the lie it had been built on. That did not restore love. But it made the ending less simple. We did the internal company review. Natalie resigned before it finished. Her farewell email was polished and empty. Caleb did not let her write the story. He called a leadership meeting and told the truth. Not all of it. Enough. He said the company had failed to formally recognize foundational contributions. He said I had been instrumental in building Morgan & Finch from the beginning. He announced my equity stake, my role as co-founder, and a governance restructure that removed unilateral authority from him. I was not in the room. Grace, one of the senior project managers, sent me a message afterward. He said your name first, not his, yours. I stared at that text for a long time. Then I cried. Again. I was tired of crying. But tears are not always weakness. Sometimes they are the body, releasing years of being forced to hold evidence no one would admit. Caleb's public acknowledgement changed things. Employees reached out. Old clients sent messages. One former staff member wrote, "We always knew. I'm sorry none of us said it. That hurt. But I understood. People protect their paychecks. Fear is not always betrayal. Sometimes it is rent." Evelyn did not attend the company announcement, but she sent Caleb a long email accusing him of destroying his reputation for a woman who would leave him anyway. He forwarded it to his attorney and did not reply. That was new. Caleb began therapy. He told me during one of our scheduled talks. I did not praise him. I simply said, "Good." He accepted that. Also new. We met every Thursday at a small cafe near the river. Public enough to feel safe, quiet enough to speak. At first, the conversations were about legal matters, then company matters, then, slowly, the marriage itself. One Thursday, I asked him, "When did you stop seeing me?" He looked down at his coffee. "I don't know. That is not good enough." He nodded. "I think, when the company started getting praise, it felt like I had finally become someone, and you remembered when I wasn't." Instead of feeling grateful, I felt exposed. I sat with that. It was ugly, but honest. "So you punished me for knowing the truth?" "Yes." The word was quiet. No excuse attached. I looked out at the river. "That is a terrible thing." "I know." "Another Thursday?" he asked. "Did you stop loving me?" I answered too quickly. "No." Then I corrected myself. I stopped trusting love to protect me. His face crumpled slightly. I looked away. Not because I wanted to hurt him. Because his pain was no longer my emergency. That was one of the biggest changes in me. For years, Caleb's discomfort had controlled the room. If he felt shame, I softened. If he felt pressure, I carried more. If he felt criticized, I apologized for my tone. If he felt small, I became smaller so he could stand tall again. Now, I let him feel. It was not cruelty. It was boundaries. 3 months passed. The divorce papers remained unsigned. Not because I had forgiven everything, because I had stopped rushing. Marin told me, "You can file any time. You can also not file yet. Power includes pacing. Power includes pacing." I liked that. I moved into the guest suite for a while, then into my own apartment downtown. Not because Caleb forced me, because I needed a space untouched by our marriage. The apartment was smaller than the house, much smaller. 1 bedroom, a balcony barely big enough for 2 chairs, a kitchen where the cabinets stuck. I loved it. Every object inside was mine by choice. A blue sofa, white curtains, my mother's old lamp, a desk facing the window, no one else's shoes by the door. No one else's silence filling the rooms. I slept better there than I had in years. Morgan and Finch stabilized under the new governance structure. Caleb remained CEO but with oversight. I accepted the co-founder title and equity but did not return full-time. Instead, I created a systems advisory role and launched a separate consultancy for women who had helped build businesses without formal recognition. I called it Paper Trail Partners. My mother laughed when I told her the name. She had recovered enough to visit me in the apartment one Sunday. She sat on my blue sofa, drinking tea, looking around with approval. "This place feels like you," she said. "I'm still figuring out who that is." She smiled. "Good. Figuring out is better than pretending." I told her about the company acknowledgement, the equity, the delayed divorce, Caleb's therapy, Evelyn's anger. She listened carefully, then said, "Do not let his improvement become your obligation." That sentence stayed with me, because it was tempting, very tempting. When someone who hurt you begins to change, there is a quiet pressure to reward them, to return quickly, to prove forgiveness by removing consequences, to make their growth feel useful. But Caleb's growth belonged to him. My healing belonged to me. 6 months after the night outside the study, Evelyn asked to meet. I said no. Then she asked again. through Caleb. I said no again. Then my mother, of all people, said, "You might want to hear what an old proud woman sounds like when she runs out of places to hide." I stared at her. "Mama?" I didn't say forgive her. I said, "Listen, if listening will free you." So I agreed. We met in the lobby of a hotel. Public. Neutral. Evelyn arrived in a gray coat, hair perfect, face tight. She looked older than I remembered. Or maybe I had stopped seeing her as untouchable. She sat across from me. For the first minute, neither of us spoke. Then she said, "Caleb barely speaks to me now." I almost laughed. "That is your opening?" Her jaw tightened, then loosened. "No, it is my complaint escaping before my apology." That surprised me. She looked down at her hands. "I did not respect you." "No, I thought you were beneath him." "Yes. I told myself that because if you mattered, then I had to admit my son needed someone I could not control." I stayed silent. She swallowed. "When Caleb's father died, I decided my son would never look weak. I thought I was protecting him. Instead, I taught him to despise the very people who loved him when he was weakest." That was the first true thing I had ever heard Evelyn say about herself. Not enough, but true. "I harmed you," she said. I felt my throat tighten. She continued, "I will not ask you to stay with him. I no longer believe I have the right to ask anything of you." "Good. And I am sorry." I looked at her for a long time. Her apology did not erase years of being cut politely. It did not restore dinners, silence, insults, comparisons, or pain. But something in me loosened. "I hear you," I said. Her eyes filled. I did not comfort her. That was not my work. A year after the study door, Caleb and I stood in front of a judge, not for divorce, for a legal separation agreement. It was not romantic. It was practical. Assets clarified, equity confirmed, property divided, company governance protected, personal boundaries written down. I kept my apartment. He kept the house but transferred part of its value into my independent account because my contributions had supported its purchase. The judge signed. I felt relief. Not sadness, not joy, relief. Outside the courthouse, Caleb walked beside me quietly. "Do you think there is ever a way back?" he asked. I looked at the courthouse steps. "I don't know." He nodded. "I'll keep working anyway." "Good," I said, "but not for me." He looked at me. "For me," he said. That was the right answer. 2 years passed. People expected a dramatic ending, either divorce or reunion. Life refused to be that simple. Caleb and I did not move back in together. We did not renew vows. We did not pretend the pain had become a sweet story. But we did not become enemies either. We became something harder to explain. Two people who had once loved badly, then told enough truth to stop destroying each other. I built Paper Trail Partners into a real company. We helped women audit their invisible contributions, formalize equity, negotiate ownership, protect intellectual property, and prepare exit plans if love and business had become tangled. Some clients stayed in their marriages. Some left. Some became co-founders officially. Some discovered they had been used and walked away before losing more years. Every workshop began with the same slide. Private gratitude is not ownership. Put the truth where power can see it. That line came from my life. My mother attended the first anniversary event. So did Caleb. He sat in the back, not as a speaker, not as a husband, as a donor, quietly funding scholarships for women who could not afford the program. Afterward, he approached me. "You were excellent," he said. "Thank you." He looked around the room. "This is what you should have been doing years ago." "Yes. I'm sorry I took years from you." That one landed deeply, because time is the thing no settlement restores. I looked at him. "You didn't take all of them," I said. "Some I gave because I did not know how to stop." He nodded slowly. "That is generous." "No, it is honest." We had both learned to respect that difference. Evelyn eventually became quieter in my life. She sent one handwritten note every Christmas. No advice, no pressure. Just a short greeting and, usually, a donation receipt for paper trail partners. My mother joked, "That woman is paying emotional back taxes." Maybe she was. Natalie moved to another state and joined a different firm. I heard nothing else. That was fine. Not every woman in a story needs to become a villain forever. Some are mirrors. Some are warnings. Some are simply people who entered a broken structure and benefited until the structure changed. I did not hate her. I did not need to. Hate is too much rent for someone who no longer lives in your life. 3 years after the night outside the study, Caleb asked me to dinner. Not at our old places. A new restaurant. Public. Simple. I said yes because I wanted to, not because guilt pushed me. We talked for 2 hours. About work. My mother. His therapy. The company. A book he was reading about shame and leadership. Then, near the end, he said, "I still love you." I looked at him. The old me would have rushed to answer. The new me let silence stand until the truth arrived. "I know," I said. He did not look hurt by the lack of return. He looked accepting. "I don't say that to pull you back," he said. "I say it because it is true, and for once I want truth without asking it to serve me." That was the man I once believed he could be. But love, even when real, does not erase history. "I love parts of you," I said. He closed his eyes briefly. "That is fair. And I love who I became after I stopped trying to survive inside your denial." He nodded. "I understand." Maybe he did. Maybe not fully. But he was no longer arguing with my reality. That mattered. We did not get back together that night. We walked to our separate cars. At mine, he said, "Good night, Liana. Good night, Caleb." Then I drove home to my apartment, opened the balcony door, and let the night air in. I did not cry. I did not ache. I felt whole. Not because I had stopped loving, because love was no longer larger than me. People often ask what I did with the divorce papers. For a long time, they stayed in a drawer. Unsigned, not forgotten, not threatening, just present. A reminder that I had options. One morning, almost 4 years after I first carried them downstairs, I took them out, sat at my desk, and read them from beginning to end. Then I shredded them. Not because Caleb and I remarried, not because I chose to return, because those papers belonged to a woman who thought she had only one way to become free. She had needed them then. I honored that. But my freedom had become bigger than divorce. I had legal separation. Ownership. My own home. My own company. My own money. My own voice. My own name. I did not need to file to prove I could leave. I had already left the lie. Whether Caleb and I ever fully divorced or ever found a different kind of future mattered less than this. I was no longer trapped. That is what people misunderstand about endings. Sometimes the question is not, did she stay or did she leave? Sometimes the question is, did she stop disappearing? I did. And once a woman stops disappearing, every room changes. Years later, I returned to the old house for a company charity dinner hosted by Morgan and Finch. Caleb invited me as co-founder. My name was on the program beside his, not underneath, beside. I walked through the front door and remembered the night outside the study, the creaking floorboard, the closed door, Evelyn's voice, Caleb's confession, the divorce papers in my handbag. For a moment, I stood in that hallway and listened to memory. Then Caleb appeared. "You okay?" he asked. "Yes," I said, "just remembering." He looked toward the study door. "Me too." The dinner went well. Clients came, employees spoke. A young woman from operations gave a speech about the company's new ownership transparency policy. She said, "This policy exists because our founders believe invisible work should not stay invisible." Our founders. I looked at Caleb. He was already looking at me. He nodded once. Quiet. No performance. No spotlight. Just acknowledgement. After the dinner, Evelyn approached me. She was slower now, softer, though still proud in the bones. "Liana," she said. Your speech was very strong. I didn't give a speech. She smiled faintly. Exactly. I laughed. So did she. That was new. Not friendship, not family, but something less sharp. Sometimes healing does not turn enemies into loved ones. Sometimes it simply removes the knife from the table. That night, after everyone left, I walked past the study door again. I touched the frame, the same place where I had once stood holding my breath. If I had not overheard that conversation, I would have filed the next morning. Maybe that would have been right too. But overhearing it gave me something divorce alone could not give. The truth that I had not imagined my contribution. The truth that Caleb knew. The truth that Evelyn's voice had lived inside our marriage longer than I realized. The truth that apology without repair is only sound. The truth that repair without boundaries is another trap. The truth that I could choose slowly. And the biggest truth of all, I was never crazy. I was only surrounded by people who benefited when I doubted myself. That is why this story matters. Not because my husband changed, not because his mother apologized, not because I got equity or built a company or found a way to stand without hatred. It matters because so many women live inside closed-door versions of the truth. People know what you did. They know how much you carried. They know they erased you. They know they let others disrespect you. They know you are tired. They know. And sometimes, the healing begins not when they finally say it, but when you finally stop needing them to say it before you believe yourself. I was about to file for divorce. Then I overheard what my husband told his mother about me. It did not save my marriage in the simple way people might expect. It saved something more important first. Me. It gave me the evidence my heart had begged for. It showed me that the years were real. The work was real. The disrespect was real. The love had been real too, but love without courage had not been enough. So if you are standing outside your own door, holding papers, keys, secrets, pain, or a decision you are afraid to make, listen closely, not only to them, to yourself. If they finally tell the truth, watch what they do next. If they apologize, look for repair. If they cry, look for accountability. If they promise change, look for paperwork, boundaries, therapy, action, time. And if none of that comes, leave. Not because you hate them, because you believe yourself. Do not stay for words spoken behind closed doors if actions in daylight stay the same. Do not leave only to punish. Leave to become whole. Stay only if truth grows roots. And whatever you choose, make sure the next chapter has one thing the last one did not. Your name, written clearly, where no one can erase it again.